if I was walking through the streets of Budapest and I saw somebody kicking a dog on the street, I wouldn't just call the police and wait for the police to show up an hour later when that abuse is said and done. I wouldn't start a petition to get this person to stop hurting this dog. I wouldn't start a Facebook group, please, please, please get this person to stop this dog. No, I would intervene, I would take that dog away from that person, and I would make sure that they would never touch that dog again. And if that's the way I would act in that situation, then if a Japanese whaling ship's about to harpoon a protected and threatened minke whale in the Antarctic, then I'm not going to stand by passively and watch that happen. I'm not going to just document it taking place. I'm going to put my ship exactly where it needs to be to stop that crime from taking place.
My name is PeterHammerstedt. I've been with Sea Shepherd since I was 18 years old. I joined Sea Shepherd as soon as I was old enough to submit an application. And this is my 7th trip down to Antarctica.
Sea Shepherd suited my personality very well. It didn't fit within the status quo. It challenged the status quo. It was an organization that used direct action to get in the way, to directly intervene to protect life.
22 minutes and 47 seconds. Longer than this talk from beginning to end. That is how long she took to die. This pregnant minke whale was harpooned twice. She was shot another 7 times by rifle before she slowly drowned in her own blood. I remember every single agonizing second of her torture, as those seconds were narrated to me on the bridge of my ship from our helicopter as it hovered above a sea that turned crimson in color. I was on the bridge of a Sea Shepherd ship in the Antarctic chasing rogue Japanese pirate whalers through ice fields that can sink a ship. As we dodged icebergs and massive storm systems, I was confronted with the sight that I'd feared the most, namely that of a whale that we could not save.
I was 14 years old. I saw a picture of a whale being killed. And it was a whale being pulled up the slipway of a big 8,000-ton factory whaling ship in Antarctica. And that image left an impression with me. Like most people, I thought whaling was something that had ended in the 70s and 80s, that it was a victory for the conservation movement. So to see that it was still happening came as a great surprise to me. And as I learned more about it, that not only was it happening, but it was also illegal, and yet still nobody was stopping it. It made me look for organizations that were actively trying to protect these whales. I realized that human beings aren't the only species on planet Earth. We share this planet with so many other species. And I really wanted to get involved in protecting their interests as well. The fact that these whales were being harpooned, that they're endangered species, that they're protected species, made me feel like it was an absolute crime against nature. It was a crime against the law, and I couldn't just be a passive spectator in that. I needed to get personally involved in trying to turn that tide of destruction.
Elizabeth Kolbert writes about the 6th extinction. The 6th in a line of 5 massive die-outs, but the first to be created by us, the first that we are ultimately responsible for. And she writes that in the next 100 years, 20 to 50% of species on this planet will disappear. Species like the bluefin tuna. The bluefin tuna is one of the largest fish in the sea. The largest bluefin tuna to be caught recently was 2.3 meters in length. But just 100 years ago, it was common to catch bluefin tuna that reached 4 to 5 meters in length.
My first campaign with Sea Shepherd I did when I was 18 years old, and we went down to the Galapagos Islands, which is a designated marine reserve. It was a campaign to stop illegal fishing. This was a marine protected area, and yet every single day this area was being invaded by poachers poaching sharks for their fins. My first action involved pulling up an illegal longline. This was an 8-kilometer long monofilament line sporting several hundred, if not thousands, of hooks. And I remember standing on the deck of my ship working 8 hours pulling this weapon of mass destruction out of the water. And it was such a concrete action because I could see these hooks, I could hold these hooks in my hand and realize that this hook was not going to kill a sea turtle or a dolphin or a seal or a shark that night. Yesterday afternoon, decided I had the chance to do a little bit of a walk around, and today Peter Sundia from the Pirate Bay is a friend of mine, so I'm very happy that we both ended up at the same conference.
Okay, nice.
So we're going to do a little bit of a sightseeing tour before he speaks this afternoon.
Something organized, or are you just going to stroll?
No, we're just going to stroll around.
That's the best way to do it.
I think so too.
Mass slaughter of animals at sea has been delayed by lack of technologies. But with the invention of the explosive-tipped harpoon, with the invention of onboard freezer facilities for factory fishing vessels catching tuna, and with the adaptation of military technologies like GPS and sonar that ensure that no fish and no whale has anywhere to hide, the 6th extinction is coming to sea.
Through the history of Sea Shepherd, we've had confrontations sometimes with government forces. I've had my vessels stormed by armed Coast Guard. I've had my ship arrested. I've been attacked physically. We go up against poachers, and we speak the only language that poachers understand, and that's the language of profit and loss. And when you're costing bad people a lot of money, they are willing to take violent means to defend their economic interests.
It's not just a protest, it's not just banner waving or petition signing, it's getting physically involved and making a difference.
Go fishing illegally in these waters.
There's not many organisations left that do what they do, trying to protect the marine life in the waters.
My ship is a 52-meter, 488-ton former whaling vessel. It worked as a Norwegian Coast Guard vessel for some time before it was purchased by Sea Shepherd. It's really the perfect ship for us. It is a vessel with an incredible endurance, so it can stay out at sea for months and months on end. It's ice strengthened, which means that there's nowhere that the poachers can run to. We can chase them even through the heavy ice fields that surround the Antarctic continent. It's my home for a lot of the year, and it's become a symbol for the types of actions that people can do to turn the tide of destruction facing the oceans. It's become very much a symbol of hope for many, many people.
So what Sea Shepherd does is we act and we intervene when governments lack either the political will or the economic means, or sometimes even the jurisdiction to enforce conservation law. And we are having a massive effect. 15 years ago, the poaching of Patagonian and Antarctic toothfish, an apex predator in the Antarctic ecosystem, was so extensive that 1 out of 3 fish was being caught illegally. A fleet of 6 ships was able to avoid justice because they were changing their names and they were changing their flags constantly. These vessels would, as an Australian customs plane would fly overhead of them and document what they're doing, as soon as that plane is over the horizon, the ship would already be poaching under a different name. They would flag to countries like Sierra Leone, to Nigeria, even to North Korea to avoid justice. And so you can imagine if the Australian government documents one of these ships poaching fish down in the Antarctic and they complain to Pyongyang about illegal fishing, that's not going to go particularly far. So the idea with this campaign was quite simple. We were going to shut down these 6 remaining poachers. And to do so, we were going to bring one of our ships, the vessel I was in command of, the Bob Barker. We were going to find one of these vessels in the most remote oceans in the world, in the Southern Ocean. And we were going to be a spotlight, lighting up their criminal enterprise to the world. We were going to be a loudhailer, exclaiming to the world, this is where this poacher is, right here, right now, arrest this ship.
I have a crew of about 30 people on my ship. When we're working together with governments, for example, off the coast of Liberia, we also take on 10 law enforcement officers from that country, usually Navy, Coast Guard, or police. And they are then able to make arrests of fishing vessels that are fishing illegally and enforce the laws of that country. We have media on board to film and document what we do. It's the realization that if we go down to the Antarctic to stop poaching, that poaching activity is only witnessed by the 30 people we have on our ship unless we have cameras with us. And those cameras allow us to bring millions of people from around the world to some of the most remote places in the world to see what's happening to marine wildlife.
On the 8th of January 2014, my crew and I, on board the Bob Barker, set the world record for the longest sea chase of a poaching vessel. This marked the 22nd day of our pursuit of the Interpol Purple Notice and CAMLAR blacklisted fishing vessel Thunder. Our hot pursuit began when we intercepted the Thunder in the shadowlands of the Southern Ocean on the 17th of December. The poachers immediately fled, leaving behind thousands of meters of illegal fishing gear in Antarctic waters. Since then, the Thunder has attempted to shake pursuit by running us through a gauntlet of heavy ice and heavy seas, to no avail. During this time, the Sam Simon, captained by Siddharth Chakravarti, returned to the point where we originally found the poachers to embark on a mammoth operation to retrieve the illegal fishing gear. We are currently on the stern of the Thunder, and we are steadfast in our commitment to maintain hot pursuit of these poachers until both ship and crew can be handed over to law enforcement authorities for prosecution.
I was invited to the country of Gabon, a small coastal state in Central Africa, where I met with the Minister of Defense and with the Minister of Fisheries. Because 15 to 40% of the global catch of fish is caught by illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing operators. 90% of the fish caught is caught in the countries of some state, which means that some country actually has the authority to uphold the laws there. So for me, it was a natural progression for Sea Shepherd that we would collaborate with governments whose resources are stretched to adequately monitor, control, and surveil their waters.
I am. I'm with Marin and the sea captain. The captain. Yeah. A meeting at 9:30. Yeah. Where are you? Where are you?
This campaign was a great success because it allowed these authorities to see what was happening on their oceans for the first time ever. It allowed them to retake control of their seas from the people that had been plundering those oceans for way too long. It allows Gabon to decide where to set up marine protected areas. It allows them to see which vessels are following the law, and it allows them to determine which areas to close off to fishing. The success of this mission in Gabon led to us being invited to Liberia in West Africa, where we just completed a 3-month campaign patrolling for illegal fishing. In 3 months of patrolling, we arrested 5 vessels for illegal fishing. One of those vessels was a Dutch-owned, Nigerian-flagged trawler. It was sustainably certified to fish for shrimp with import permits to bring shrimp into the United States. When we inspected the vessel, on board were cardboard boxes The shrimp that had been caught already was labeled to export to Greece to enter into the European Union. This was a vessel found in Liberian waters without a permit to fish, in an inshore exclusion zone that's reserved for the artisanal fishing community, and there's 33,000 Liberians that depend on the artisanal fishing industry for their livelihoods. And this was a vessel that was sustainably certified for fishing because they use what are known as turtle excluder devices. These are grates attached to the nets that ensure that turtles aren't caught. And yet these turtle excluder devices were not being used. The vessel was arrested, it was brought back to Monrovia, where it faced justice.
One of the most dangerous situations that I've been in during my time with Sea Shepherd involved a campaign to stop Japanese whaling down in the southern oceans. On that campaign, we had found the Achilles heel of the Japanese whaling fleet, namely their big refueling tanker that they use to keep the vessels at sea for the entire time of the whaling season. The plan was simple. We were going to block the refueling from taking place. And so I used my 500-ton ship to basically double park this 5,000-ton refueling tanker, taking the position that this 8,000-ton factory whaling ship was going to take to refuel. I then told the captain of the whaling vessel that if he wanted to refuel, he was going to have to sink me to do it, that we were going to stand our ground and we weren't going to move. This 8,000-ton ship, this 5-story tall building of a vessel, then rammed my ship several times. And it wasn't really until we put the captain of that ship in a position where he would either have to back down or sink us that he finally backed down, the refueling stopped, and the Japanese whaling fleet canceled their season for that year. And that was a year where we saved 932 whales from slaughter.
This is Japan Coast Guard officer on board Maru and warn you to follow of trusted and
Nishimaru, this is Bob Barker. Stop, stop.
Never give up, never give in. Shut you down, never give up, never give in. Shut you down, the southern ocean. Never give up, never give in. Shut you down, the southern ocean.
The future of the oceans depends on us being able to identify key areas of biodiversity, places like Antarctica, places like West Africa, digging in our positions and fighting back. The future of our oceans is in the hands of passionate and compassionate people who recognize that throughout human history, social movements and social change is driven not by governments, but by individuals who care. People who recognize that in their capacity to suffer, animals are equals. People who recognize that the animal industries are one of the leading causes of climate change, and people who eliminate animal products from their diets. People who go out to sea and fill law enforcement voids that exist, that don't close their eyes and expect governments to solve their problems, but people that take direct action to turn the tide.
Yushin Maru number 3, Bob Barker. Let me be very, very clear. What you are doing is illegal. We are doing nothing wrong. Your actions are being reported to the governments of Australia and the government of New Zealand. I have 9 Australian citizens on board and you are risking their lives. Make it very clear what you are doing is illegal.
Action stations to the water cannon, helmets on the border bomb power. You're seasick now, it's your bad luck. We need you up on deck right now. And you must stay true and keep you dry. And the crane will know, and the dollar will fly. Oh, the chopper goes up, and crazy people.
One of the big problems, of course, with what's happening at sea is that, one, a lot of the fishing that tuna are pelagic species. So they are transnational, they go through and migrate through the waters of lots of different countries. Sometimes they're in international waters that don't fall under the jurisdiction of any country, and it's very, very difficult to regulate and to manage. And a big problem, of course, is that it is the tragedy of the commons. These fishing vessels feel that if they don't take the tuna, then some other operator will. So you have, for example, off Sardinia in the Mediterranean, the tuna is nowhere to be found. And the local fishermen in Sardinia say, okay, we're willing to take a 5-year hands-off approach to fishing. We're willing to not go out fishing, but in return, or before we do that, the illegal fishing has to be eradicated. Because otherwise, the poachers will just come in and benefit off of these legal operators stepping back.
It's estimated that 15 to 40% of the global catch of fish is caught by illegal, unreported, and unregulated operators. 90% of the global catch of fish is caught in the waters of some state. So a country actually has the jurisdiction to enforce the laws there. And so for Sea Shepherd, the answer was really clear. We needed to start partnering with governments that maybe lack the economic resources to adequately monitor, control, and surveil their waters. I just returned from Liberia, where we'd been working for 3 months together with the government of Liberia to stop illegal fishing in Liberian waters. During a 3-month patrol, we were able to arrest 5 vessels for illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, and we were also able to shut down illegal fishing in Liberia for the time being.
Yeah, cool. I speak on the 3rd, right? Yeah, perfect. So tomorrow is just...
Tomorrow is just like that.
I can attend.
You can have fun.
Okay, great.
So I give you this.
Yep.
You have the pass as well. It's a wristband that you need to put on.
That's in the bag.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. And one more thing. That you have the filming tomorrow, right?
Yes.
Okay, let me just check.
The planet that we live on is not really planet Earth, it's planet ocean. 72% of our planet is the sea. And I feel incredibly humbled to be able to spend as much time on the sea as I do. You realize how small and insignificant really we all are in context of these greater ecosystems in which we live.
I am confident that we can turn this tide of destruction facing the oceans. We're winning in places like Antarctica, we're winning in places like West Africa, and with your support, we will continue to expand our operations. But winning the fight for our ocean's survival, for our own survival, requires us to actively fight back against those who have plundered our seas for way too long, instead of being just passive spectators to the 6th extinction.
I've been to some of the last wildernesses on this planet. I've been to the frontier, I've been to the ends of the world, I've been to Antarctica. And I've seen places that really belong to the whales, the seals, and the fish of the sea, these untouched, pristine places that we need to protect as islands of biodiversity. I feel very privileged to get to see these places, but I also have to see some of the worst of what people do to our oceans. I've seen whales harpooned, I've seen seals clubbed to death, and that's something that I have to carry with me. But it becomes the fuel that I need to continue campaigning for a healthy sea.
I think it's too often in our society that we kind of buy ourselves free of guilt. We contribute to NGOs, we give like a monthly donation, and then we kind of expect them to take care of the problem. But Sea Shepherd's model is based on public participation. People who are artists or innovators or seafarers or whatever their skill set might be, they come to Sea Shepherd and they contribute that creativity to that movement.